Welcome to Not Just Any Book Club, Off the Books. And we are going through the Criterion Collection. This week's selection is Perfect Days by Wim Wenders. I'm Justin.
I'm Pierce. This is a wonderful, wonderful film that I saw in the theater when it came out. I saw an ad for it, the trailer, at some point in the lead up to release, and I immediately felt some kind of a connection with the movie. And so, yeah, it's a wonderful movie, and I'm really excited to talk about it.
Yeah. And I also saw the trailer for that. It wasn't playing anywhere near me, but I will say that trailer did also excite me. So I was actually really hyped to watch this movie. With that being said, what is this movie about? I shall now tell you. Hopefully you watched it because we're about to spoil everything. So, Hirayama works as a public toilet cleaner in Tokyo who enjoys listening to music on cassette and reading books before going to sleep. His perfect routine. He also likes to take pictures of trees throughout the day and mostly keep to himself unless someone really asks him to do something. He's very meticulous in his work and spends much of his time focusing despite his young co-worker Takashi's unprofessional behavior, being late, loud, and not focused, and frequently meets with his friend while on the job. Eventually, Takashi brings his girlfriend, Aya, but his motorbike will not start. So he rudely asks Hirayama, who begrudgingly agrees to use his van, which Aya and Hirayama actually bond as they listen to Patti Smith on cassette. Takashi tries to sell the cassette tapes, seeing that they are valuable, but Hirayama refuses. Instead, just giving him some of his own cash to spend time with the girl. However, after they both leave, Hirayama runs out of gasoline after driving home, forcing him to sell one of his cassette tapes for gas money. Aya returns the Patti Smith cassette tape that Takashi stole and gives him a kiss on the cheek, which puts him in a good mood. He hangs out at a bar where he's well acquainted with everybody. Then, Nico, his niece, shows up unexpectedly, but no matter, they start vibing, even appreciating his hobby and his job. And they recite this line while they're biking out together. Next time is next time. Now is now. Eventually, Hirayama's sister comes up and picks her daughter up, asking him once again to return home to care for his father, but Hirayama refuses. So then asked him if he cleans toilets for a living, which he says yes, and the daughter returns to the limo, and they all drive away, and he cries. And on top of that, the next day, Takashi quits without notice and forces him to work without even having additional staff. And on top of that, he goes to a bar, and he sees a woman embracing a mystery man, which he storms off, upset. He buys cigarettes and drinks by the river. Then the man he saw hugging, embracing the woman, approaches him and reveals that he is her ex-husband and is dying of cancer. Hirayama comforts him and plays shadow tag with him, saying that change is inevitable, even asking if the shadows get darker if they're on top of each other. Then, the next day, he listens to Nina Simone's cover of Feeling Good and cries. What an ending. So, yeah. What did you think of it, Pierce?
I loved it. I think it's an incredible film. Probably one of my favorite films. I knew walking out of the theater that this was one of my favorite films, which is not. I was going to say it's not a common thing, but the first time you see a film that it is one of your favorites, usually it's pretty instant. But. Yeah, it's such an endearing movie that sort of just in kind of a complicated time as we were all just sort of getting past COVID and the lockdowns, sort of enshrining the ordinary life and the simple parts of life and enjoying things as they are and taking it a little bit slower as we all kind of sped back to get back to our normal lives. I think it's very timely, and also in another way, timeless. And I I realize out of context that sounds nonsensical, but I don't think it is in this case. I think it's specifically an answer to COVID and also sort of an answer to an answer to the after effects of COVID, and also sort of an answer to our constant hustle and bustle and drive and need for something better than what we have rather than enjoying the things that are currently around us.
That is very well said. Before I go to my opinion, did you watch this before or after Paris, Texas? Another Wim
I watched
Wenders
this
joint.
after Paris, Texas. I don't remember if I'd seen Wings of Desire yet, but I watched this after Paris, Texas, which I also love and is also one of my favorite movies. So,
Okay, yeah. Yeah, Wim Wenders. The unique part about this movie is that this is a Japanese language movie that is directed by a German director, and it has a lot of American music, and I would even say some American influence. Globalization is awesome.
yeah.
Um,
Well, and I think it's funny because one of my favorite paintings is the Great Blue Wave, which is sort of another example of globalization and global trade, and Prussian blue getting traded over to Japan to make this wonderful painting in the Blue Wave. So it's just funny, just that jump to a different medium, and I still love something that has that same sort of meaning behind it.
Well, my opinion is a little bit less than what Pierce thinks. I still really enjoyed the film. I just didn't connect with it as much as I did. Maybe I'll connect with it on another watch. Maybe as I mature. I didn't find anything wrong. It's just something that, like, up to personal preference. I've seen the movie Patterson with Adam Driver, directed by Jim Jarmusch, which is something I relate to a little bit more. It's also a vibesy movie about someone that just has a job. A job that I don't want to say is, I have to be rude, but like, it's not glorified. It's not a job we usually see in the movies or as something you want to aspire to. But the man that's working it is happy. I just found Patterson to be a little bit funnier, and I just love the fact that he is creating art, mostly poetry. Here in Perfect Days, it's photography, which isn't my niche. I much prefer the poetics and everything. So I related that film a little bit more, and I don't want to compare these films because they are going for different things. But here, this movie is very slow and quiet, which is the point. And the main character doesn't talk much, which the main actor, who whatever his name is, he can really act with his eyes and his facial expression, and you can really see into his mind.
Yeah, I'm sorry to interrupt, but this is one of the films that I bought on the Criterion Collection because I love it so much and it's available. And so I watched the interview with Wim Wenders on there, which sort of acts like a commentary. I feel like this is kind of it would be both a good and bad movie to have a real commentary track over because it's so quiet all the time. But isn't that like the point when you rather sit in the quiet, right, instead of listening to Wim Wenders talk the whole time? Yeah. But anyway, so he made that decision for us. He did sort of a 30-minute interview for the disc instead of a commentary track. And in that, he actually says that he was struck by Kōji Yakusho's eyes in some of his other performances, and that is part of why he went out to go get him for this role, because he acts so well with his eyes. And I'll talk more about more stuff he said in the interview later, but
I'm excited.
But that was something that I noted that you pointed out. Yeah, he's an excellent facial actor. He's got a real
very
talent.
interesting face. I just looked him up, and oh my lord, he was in the movie Cure, and the movie Tampopo, which that movie is something. I don't know if he was the main role. I know he wasn't the main role in that, but I only remember up the movies Noodles. And
I believe Wim Wenders said the role that he discovered him in was "Shall We Dance" from 1996.
I've actually seen that movie. I know it got remade into something else, like with Richard Gere. No, I've actually seen that one because I was really bored on Netflix. And Shall We Dance? It's also a very pleasant banger of a film. It's just about wanting to dance when you're late in your life. It's a good time. But yeah, whatever I was saying. Yeah, just very quiet, very meditative, which is the point. But I don't know. I like the film just fine. It's gonna scratch a perfect niche. It didn't scratch my niche, and that is okay. We all have our preferences. But what this movie really shines is the fact that that it is not pro happiness poverty propaganda. This guy willingly chooses to be below the wealthy. I don't want to say poverty, but like he doesn't choose to live luxuriously.
Yeah, he clearly chose to clean toilets because it was meaningful to him, and not because like necessarily all people should do that or something. There's clearly some kind of backstory that goes unsaid. Now, everything that I've heard Wim Wenders say is the backstory. I haven't found very enticing. I think it is better left up to interpretation, left up to sort of the imagination, than what Wim Wenders, the specifics that he gives when he does talk about what he thinks, the backstory is supposed to be.
It's
or
left
our
ambiguous for a
Hirayama.
reason.
Yeah, right. So yeah, there's clearly some kind of like he chose to do this for whatever reason, and I think it's better that it's not stated exactly why.
Yeah, it's up for interpretation. And again, it's not really the point either. It's more about the pride that he takes in his work, which is not luxurious. But you see that he's perfectly happy. And it's not like he's doing it for the money. He is incredibly focused in his work. He enjoys the little things what little money he gets. He spends it wisely. He can read he has a beautiful bookshelf. He likes to go into this bookstore, which he likes to have small talk with this clerk, which I really wish there were more scenes of that bookstore because I was like, that was interesting. And he generally has a good time. He takes lots of photos. A lot, like photography is his main hobby, I would say, as well, outside of work. And you can see that it takes a lot of joy and pride in that as well. Oh, it was also very observant because there was this mini subplot with the homeless man, which is never really brought up, but it kind of adds a little bit of flavor. And there's that other woman in the park that is also just watching him take photos, and he never says anything. But it's one of those little flourishes.
Yeah, I think also it's sort of some of the things that you've said. I'm glad you brought them up, but I almost want to take a beat for a second and really like look a little bit closer at some of these things, like how little he has, right? Like he's got a beautiful bookshelf and a beautiful book collection, his collection of music, but it's very sort of specific, and he takes pride in the things that he has, and he has very few of those things. And then also the camera, the photos that he's taking, the little ritualization he does of it. He takes pride in the things that he does. He takes pride in the things that he has. And then there's also part of another reason why I think I love this movie so much. And I hate to say it because I think it just sort of hits a lot of things that I agree with. There's this idea of creation sort of there, that this is how he creates, trying to capture these little moments. He's a little bit of a perfectionist with it. He looks at several photos that he's taken of the light coming through the trees, which we have yet to really talk about. There's a specific name for that.
Ayakoto?
We can talk about. Yeah, Hayakota, which we can talk about
Okay.
in a second. But he tries to take the photos of the light coming through the trees, and he's a bit of a perfectionist about it.
Mm-hmm.
There's sort of you know, I think creating is important. I think it's an important aspect of life, that we create things, that we make things, and this is sort of his version of that. That's how he does it.
Yeah, he doesn't do it through ChatGPT or generative AI, is what you're saying.
No, he does not.
Yeah. But even to extenuate on that point as well, there's a reason why this is in a small aspect ratio. It's because it's supposed to look like a painting or like a photograph, which he does. And this is also from Vin Vendor's interview. This is not what I was thinking when it was shot like that. So it's like a photograph, and it's or a painting, whatever you prefer. And it's also like a toilet stall, which is like very small and enclosed. Also shot handheld like a documentary, so it's like a very intimate look at his life.
I think that is part of what makes it so endearing, that it feels pretty real. And Vim Wenders talked a bit about that, how he's done documentaries and he's done fictional films, and this is the time that he's really brought those things together, and it feels like a real person, like we're just sort of following this guy around. And yeah, I think that's part of why it feels so endearing. The other thing is that obviously Kōji Yakusho is such an incredible actor, but just to come back to things Wim Wenders was saying in that interview, he talks about how they shot this in 16 days, so just over 2 weeks. They didn't have a lot of time. They didn't have a huge budget, and so he like never let Yakusho go back to his trailer. He had a trailer as part of his contract, and he never let him go back there because they were constantly shooting, and they would rehearse scenes, and so he would be in character, and then they would shoot them, and so he was in character basically the entire time. So he essentially became Harayama for this 16-day period. Is how both he and Vim kind of described it. To the point that Vim at one point asked him, "Can I just shoot the rehearsals? Like, you do it so perfectly, exactly as I'm envisioning it," or however he phrased that. The first time, I want to get that on film. And he said a lot of times they did use that like rehearsal take.
That is interesting. Huh. The more I know. Yeah, he does feel like a fully realized person, because it also goes out of his way to just follow his daily routine, where it is very strict. I think it shows it multiple times, but it is just very much meticulous. You'll watch this guy clean. There may be some minor interruption with someone walking to the stall, and then he has to walk out and be politely. And it's not even like he's disdainful, just waiting for them to go. He views it as part of his job, which is pretty interesting. And I mean, throughout all this, I just like that it doesn't feel like pro-happiness poverty propaganda. One, because this film does have it shows the annoyances in living such a simple life, not even through the poverty of it, but like basically if something throws off your routine, like Takayashi suddenly calling the day out, or ultimately just like people being disappointed in you, like with his sister at the end. People, it really leaves it up to question: do you think this life is worth it? Do you think that you could be doing this, or do you think he is even happy? Because he cries at the end, and it's supposed to be ambiguous if he's overwhelmed with emotion, or he wishes that he would have a richer lifestyle. I like that.
I sort of disagree. I don't think it is ambiguous as to whether or not he wishes he lived a different lifestyle. I think his feelings about the current moment are ambiguous, but so man, what was the word for the sunlight between the trees?
Ayakata?
Ayakata. the way that, and I want to talk about what Vim says about that final scene maybe a little bit later when we get off of this more slightly more meaningful topic. But I think what Vim says is cool, but it's just we're talking about something else right now. That moment where he's where he's crying and then he's smiling and then there's tears streaming. I feel like yes, his feelings are sort of ambiguous, but I think that from what I've heard and how I feel about it in the moment, that it is sort of this like acceptance moment for him. This moment of Ayakura for his own personal emotions and state. And that it's good for him. He's able to kind of take the good with the bad, the light with the shadow, like that idea of Ayakura, the light filtering through the trees, right? He's able to sort of take that into his own life rather than what he was kind of doing until he meets that guy, kind of the guy in the park who has cancer, shutting out the dark parts, right? Just trying to live this life that he's made for himself and you know, keep it positive and shut out all the traumatic events and whatever other shadow from his life.
I like that. Yeah. And I think I think the scene a little right before that where it does meet up with the man. I think even that entire sequence, but I think that one sequence is probably the only time in the film, correct me if I'm wrong, where the film overtly says something and kind of says the message of the film.
I think next time is next time, now is now is also sort of pretty overt, but yeah, one of few times for sure.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Basically with the shadow tag, and him asking if the shadows get darker if they overlap each other. There's some overt meaning in there, rather than it just being a fun game for him. Especially the situation with the man lamenting his life, the man with no name, basically about like the fact that I forgot if he says he lives a life of regret, but he kind of is upset about the situation, obviously, because he's about to die and wants to reconcile with his ex-wife.
I also think that there's sort of a message there about maybe leaning on people a little bit more, right? Like that the happiness that he has with his niece, and the sorrow that he feels over, I think, a couple different things when she leaves, including disappointing his family, separation, all that. That in tandem with this scene where they're trying to overlap their shadows, trying to see if they get darker, and they don't seem to be. And out of this sort of this moment where they're trying to overlap their shadows comes this game and this moment of joy where they're fighting back and forth. Kind of it all comes together to sort of show that maybe he comes to realize that Hirayama comes to realize that he can be happy in his sort of very simple life, but there's something to be said about companionship. Maybe it shouldn't be as solitary as it is. He should lean on other people. He should share his troubles and his trauma and his shadow with other people.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll say, all right. Nico. We're going to go back to the other one as well, with Nico saying now is now and when is when, right?
Yeah. Next time is next time. Now is now.
Butchered that.
That scene was in the trailer and it gave me chills. That's part of why I was so excited to see this movie. I like literally just seeing that in the trailer was like, whoa, what is this movie? It's such a simple saying and scene, but I think it also, there's something that feels so right about it, just to
it's a mantra.
say that so succinctly, so simply.
Yeah. I really like that quote. I'm just focusing on the now, and you can only just not worry about the future because that's going to rob up today's joys. Just keep on living life. Um, and that is reflected in Nico's character, I would say, because she does take joy, or at least curiosity, in the fact that she's just living the present with him. She's not even focused on the fact that she may have to be returned back to her mom. She's just enjoying time with her uncle, her cool uncle, who may be a little bit below her class or financial class, whatever that is. But it's no matter. She's just enjoying time, enjoying life with her uncle.
Right. And I also think she sort of, I think she sort of sits in for all of us in that I think that especially post COVID, there's sort of not many of us live, obviously not many of us in general live like Hirayama, obviously. But I think there is sort of a deep yearning for a return to some simplicity in the last couple of years, especially since COVID and its aftermath. I think that Hirayama sort of, there's something about his life and the way that he chooses to live it that I think appeals on a deeper level to a lot of people. And I think that that's sort of what his niece sits in for. That
interesting.
Everyone sort of yearns for something from this life, something simpler than what we have.
Yeah, that is a really good way of saying it. And I love her non-judgmental attitude. And the fact that she doesn't seem brain rotted. She just feels like she's curious. She
feels like a teen without being like, overly attached to the internet, like at her hip, basically.
Yeah, and that is also reflected in her uncle, Hirayama, where he listens to a lot of 60s English music, which I thought would be something that would put him out. But then I do remember the time that I read Haruki Murakami, and he's all about that American music.
Yeah.
Jazz, Bob Dylan.
Yeah.
I don't know why.
And Wim talks about this in the interview too. He said that he felt he was talking to the Japanese correspondent who he was working with, and he was like, would it be weird if because these are all songs he said he loved in his youth. And he said, would it be weird if I, a German man, put songs for this Japanese man about my age that I loved, that he loves? And apparently the guy laughed and he said, if you in Germany were listening to American music in the 60s, what do you think someone about your age in Japan was listening to?
Okay.
Like everybody was just kind of listening to American music in that time, at least in Western countries, like Soviet bloc, but yeah, like that was just standard.
Interesting that they listen to Bob Dylan though, because it's all about the lyrics there, and definitely not his voice.
I don't think Bob Dylan was. Was Bob Dylan?
Oh no, okay, no, he was not. But when I was listening to, I was mixing it up with my notes about Haruki Murakami, who listened to a lot of Bob Dylan, which I'm like,
I see.
When do you do that? But now my question to you as well is like, do you think that the lyrics are relevant, or is it just about the vibes?
I think so. I think the lyrics are at least somewhat relevant. I think especially maybe not for every single song.
Yeah.
But I mean, especially for Feeling Good, probably Perfect Day, maybe Sitting on the Dock of the Bay as well. It was sort of relevant. Yeah. So Wim talks about also how the music sort of sets the mood for the day in the film. For each day that Hirayama goes out, the music sort of sets the mood for that day. And so he picks it. He's very particular about it, what he's going to be listening to, and it sets a tone in his life and for us as the people watching the film. So it is meaningful in that sense. I don't know lyrically if it's always meaningful.
Yeah, the tone. Yeah. I mean, I think the two that I wrote down are probably the most overt with it being meaningful is "Perfect Day" by Lou Reed. It's a song I love, and it's what the song is. The movie's named after the song title,
Mhm.
which apparently is not about heroin. Lou Reed has been very adamant that even though all of his other catalog is about heroin, this song is not, and which is funny to me. But perfect. It's been such a perfect day. I'm glad I spent it with you. Probably reflective of just the fact that he's enjoying life. He's enjoying life with Nico. So it's not too much of a stretch to say that that's probably the big instant where the lyrics really do matter. And I would also say the end with "Feeling Good" by Nina Simone, or it's a cover by Nina Simone, I think, where you. I don't know about the rest of the song, but I think the words "I'm feeling good," especially with that powerful crescendo, with him crying,
Yeah,
that
there's sort
that means
of
something.
feeling good by like Nina Simone's version of it has like a bit of a darkness behind it.
Hmm.
There's something deeper going on than
Hmm.
what the lyrics or what her voice would necessarily tell you. Sort of a dark jazzy vibe, I guess is how I would put
Hmm.
it.
Yeah.
Um, and I think it's sort of perfect for the ending and the meaning behind all of it.
Um, I'm wondering if the song "Redondo Beach" by Patti Smith had something, but I don't think that. I think they just like the song, the vibe.
Yeah,
That's the song that Aya was like asking for the cassette, which
yeah,
is a good
right.
song music. Yeah.
Yeah.
Another thing that I wrote down is that there's a building that always appears. It, that appears in the shots. I think it was like a new building, and then Vim Vendors really wanted to have it there because it looked cool. So.
Well, it's the name for the building is I want to say like the tree or something when translated into English. Um hold on. Let me look this up 'cause it's going to bother me.
Yeah, because I do was just like it kept on appearing over and over again. I'm like, all right, I don't think it means anything
The
symbolically.
Tokyo Sky Tree is what it's called.
Ah,
Well, so it's meaningful, right? Because
yeah.
the we see the Tokyo Sky Tree constantly, right? But he pays little attention to it. It's something monumental and man made, right? A goal
Hmm.
for society to build something like that,
Hmm.
and yet it does not hold a candle to the way that the world is sort of structured around the real trees, the way the light filters
Hmm.
through them, the beauty in that the natural world. Um, I think it's yes, it's a new it's a new building for the
Hmm.
city, but I also think it's meaningful specifically for the movie.
Huh, that is interesting. Um,
It
also,
doesn't it's not complex like the trees
mhm,
are, like with the light filtering through that Japanese word that I
mm,
should have written down because it's
Ayakoda.
so important. Yeah. Um the it doesn't reflect the complexity of human life like nature does.
uh, that is true. Um, really, I like that the fact that Vim Vendors really took his time to find some unique locations in Tokyo, locations that I never thought I would see, or well, I've never been to Tokyo, but like the more quieter aspects of the city, where it's not all bustling all the time. Um, I just never thought I'd get to see that side of Tokyo, or even Japan. That's like the quiet side of the urban area, which I thought was pretty neat. I allegedly this was I think I remember the fact about this film that this was made to be a commercial for the toilets. It was supposed to be the short film, but Vin Vendors was like, you know what, I'm gonna make it a full feature length film, and that is pretty unique to that too, because the toilets in here are pretty cool, especially the ones that are like translucent, and then you hit a button and then it becomes opaque like a wall.
Mhm.
Pretty neat. Makes me want to go there.
I heard him talking about it, and he said that he had to sort of sell it to the people who, you know, wanted him to make a sort of commercial for the or for the Tokyo toilets, right? He said, I think we I think he said, I think we could make something better or more meaningful or something like that. And they were like, well, if you can, you know, keep it, you know, make sure you get it done in about the same amount of time, keep it to around the same budget, then I'll tell you what. Or maybe it was about, I think it was more about time constraints than budget, but it was like, hey, you make sure you finish it and we'll see. Really cool that they let him do that because otherwise we would not have had this movie.
Yeah. What started off as a commercial got an Oscar nomination. Who would have thought? But yeah, I think those were all my notes. I do want to say that it is. I would say that this is also a pretty glorified version of Japan. It shows Japan. It's basically a giant ad for you to travel to Tokyo, which, hey, Tokyo is a cool place to be in. It even shows just like the underbelly, not the underbelly, but like mostly like the minute points of other people's lives, like how he has a conversation with the bookstore clerk. Everybody just so friendly, even in the communal bath. Old men hide their genitals, which, you know, if you've ever been in a YMCA, that does not happen. Everybody's just nice to each other.
You've never been to Japan. Maybe they do. Maybe the Japanese people do. I'm not saying. I'm just saying. There's a lot of cultural differences. Maybe you don't know. Maybe you don't know. I'm not. I won't definitively say that they definitely do hide, but they could. They sure could.
Yeah. To go to travel to Japan just to prove me wrong here.
I do want to briefly mention, because I did say I would talk about it, just the sort of what Vim said about the ending. They initially shot it like they shot the rest of the film, in sort of a documentary style, with the director of photography sitting passenger and they're recording Yakusho playing Hirayama from the passenger seat. And his director of photography started like crying as he was filming it. And he looked at Vim, trying to get Vim to be like, he was trying to get him to keep looking at the screen and make sure that the shot was right, because he couldn't see, because he was weeping. And they got done with it and he was like, that's perfect. Like, it's so great. But they decided to give it another shot anyways, and film it not in live traffic, not, you know, documentary style in live traffic, just, you know, because obviously in the final shot we get this head-on shot of Hirayama, and you can't do that in live traffic. It would not be safe. So they did that in a studio, and apparently the whole crew wept, and so that's what made it into the movie. It is a very powerful moment. I'll give it that. So yeah, I want to briefly talk about that because I said I would, but I think I've said most of what I have to say about the film.
Well, that is interesting that it was shot on a studio. I'm hoping that they had the music play, because otherwise it's just him crying without the music.
I would imagine they would, because I don't know. It seemed like that they really, you know, Yakusho was very much in character. So I would imagine he would have had it playing in the background.
Oh, and it is a pretty good note to end on as well. And speaking, I don't have any more notes. Do you?
I don't think so. I think I've said my piece about this all-time great film.
Okay. I think this movie, I think this movie will last. If not, it's going to be a cult film that gets brought up among astute film circles, but I do think this movie will probably endure. Even though it's not among my personal favorites, I do greatly respect the film and what it accomplished for other people that may not be me, but for other people.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think that I mean, I've said it a million times. I think it's wonderful. But yeah, I should say the concern that I always have because we we're doing this in reference to Criterion. The concern that's always there when a new film gets added to the Criterion Collection is sort of like, will this film stand the test of time? The Criterion Collection is supposed to be this, very prestigious thing. Not to say it's the end all be all, but if your film gets into it, that's a prestigious group to be included in. And so will this film sort of stand the test of time and be considered this sort of prestige film worthy of its addition to the Criterion Collection?
Will this
I think
be
so.
Yeah. I'm wondering, this movie I do think will be like a very popular pick in the Criterion Closet. If there's a celebrity that walks in, that movie will be picked very frequently.
I know if I ever got in the Criterion Closet, this would be one of my picks for sure.
Yeah. Well, on that note, the next film we'll be talking about and continuing this little Criterion challenge is Sweet Smell of Success, which is a movie that I love dearly. And if I were in that closet, I'd be picking up that film myself. And next week, we will also be talking about the book, The Lathe of Heaven by Ursula K. Le Guin.
Yeah. I was going to say, if you're here mostly for the book episode, but stay till the end of this one anyways, we are still doing those. The Lathe of Heaven is coming as an episode. So be on the lookout for that. Please give us a like, a rating, a subscription, a follow on whatever platform. We truly do appreciate it. Sorry. You can find us on Twitter or TikTok still technically. We haven't really posted there in very long. At Not Just Any Pod. Anything else, Justin?
Stay tuned for more extra content that may not be arising. Maybe on a Substack. Who knows?
Oh, true. Yeah, we might have some. We be blogging if if you're not done hearing the sound of our voices. Maybe instead you'd like to read some of the things that we say.
Hopefully this part does not age badly. Just you
like all the times we said we were gonna have extra content on YouTube
for 2 years straight. And speaking about things that do not age badly, goodbye, Prometheus.